disclaimer. If today's your first day at Emmanuel and you don't like what's about to happen, will you please come back next week and let us try again? Because here's the deal. I wrote the sermon I was supposed to give today probably 8 times, like start to finish. And every time I got to the end of it, just felt like it was total smoke and borderline patronizing and fake. Like things that have been said about the text for decades and that I've heard dozens of pastors speak on and saying the things that I wanted to say. And it just felt so like not in reality. And so I don't have a sermon for you today. I'm really not joking. Like the screen's not going to roll out. I don't have any slides. I know that's how a lot of you take notes. I don't have any because I really legitimately do not have a sermon to give today. What I want to do instead is almost pretend like we're sitting at a coffee shop together and read a couple things that are said in this book, James, and just kind of respond to them out loud. Because some of what's in here is so stinking hard. Like, this is not all pixie dust that you sprinkle on your life and it just makes everything better. Like, if somebody told you that, they haven't read the whole thing. And if some pastor got up on a platform and told you, like, if you become a Christian, it's going to be awesome, and your life is going to be awesome, and everything's going to get better and easier, they owe you an apology. So, like, I just want to do real talk for a little bit. Because the paragraph I want to read to you is, you would have a hard time convincing me that this paragraph is not the most difficult paragraph in this whole thing. Like, start to finish, to me, this is the one where I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to try to be that, because I can't be that. I literally read it and go, I can't do that. And so here's how we're not doing this today. I don't have some cutesy little phrase that I'm going to say 5 times. I don't. You know, like the phrase that we usually put in the green box, and like, if you don't hear me say anything else, hear this thing, and it's the thing that we post on social media and blah, blah, blah. I'm not doing that today, because every time I tried to come up with one of those, I honestly thought about people that I knew would be sitting here today, and I know about their story, and I wouldn't be a good friend or pastor or person if I just acted like it's easy to navigate through that when you're a Christian. It's not. Like, it's just not. There is stuff in life that is really, really hard. Like, I think as Christians, we just need to say that out loud more often. Like, this is hard. And I don't have the answer to every question. And if you're anything like me, who grew up going to church, I know I've said this before, but I literally felt like I lived at my church growing up. It was every Sunday. If you weren't barfing or bleeding, you were going to church. And it was Wednesday for the other, we'd have more church on Wednesday. And then there was Friday stuff all the time. Like, we were just at church, and my mom was the kids choir director, and my dad was on the elder board, and like, we had dinner with the pastor. I mean, we were, and in that, you kind of learn to play this game. Like, you learn the part of a good Christian. And it's so easy to just play the part of a good Christian. And when hard things come along and you have doubt and you have questions and all that, like I do, it feels really wrong to say anything out loud like that. It feels like an unforgivable thing. And I'm just really tired of that. The 38 years I've been going to church, there are still days where I go, God, this is what I get for being faithful? Have you ever had that? Like, God, this is what I get? Like, I've told the line my whole life. I've literally. And you're going to let me go through this? You're going to let that happen? Have you ever been mad at God? I can count on one hand the number of times that I've been mad at God. And to be honest with you, I've had some moments this week where I was pretty mad at him. And I know some of you may call for resignation after saying that, but there are just times where you go, this isn't fair, this isn't right, this isn't. Like, I'm literally just going to ramble for the next few minutes, and I'm going to let you see what goes through my brain and how scary that place is. But like, moments where you go, I thought somebody told me it wasn't supposed to be like this. And some well-meaning Christian, maybe a close friend, will sit you down and they'll start telling you a bunch of stuff, and it just feels like, do you have any idea what this actually feels like? Do you have any idea what it means to lose a loved one or to lose a child? Like, are you really going to sit there and just start spewing off stuff you've memorized because you've gone to church your whole life? Do you really have any idea what this feels like when my marriage falls apart? And I think sometimes they look back at us and they go, can you be honest for 1 second and just ask why? Why is this? Why isn't this just better? That's the age-old question, right? You've had people in your life that are not like church people or religious people all the time go, hey, God's either all-powerful and doesn't care enough to do anything about it, or he can't do anything about it. And a lot of us, I won't speak for you, I'm not going to wrestle with that. Because that's not very Christianly. That's not what a good church person would do. And so I came to this part this week. It's James. Sorry, again, I don't have a slide for you. I'll just read it to you. This is the most difficult paragraph, most difficult sentence, and I'm going to go so far as to say, maybe cruel. James says, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. Seriously? Like, what kind of crazy talk is that? Have you ever, honestly, when was the last time you sat down with a Bible and you read it as if you didn't have any boundaries about what went through your brain when you read it? Because that's what I have these brick, reinforced walls of my Christian upbringing around my brain that does not allow me to think certain things. But if I come at this just as face value and I read, when I go through something really difficult, I'm supposed to consider that joy. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And it really doesn't seem fair at all to me. And I'm not speaking for you. This is literally me. Like, that doesn't seem okay to say out loud. And what's even more maddening to me is he says, consider it, like, think about it, like, you have a choice. You get to choose how you navigate the junk in your life. But no, you don't. You don't, at least you don't get to choose whether or not you do. Right? Consider it, think about it. For somebody wired like me, who literally lives their life for the applause and praise of other people. Like, that's just how I'm wired. I don't know that I'm doing the right thing unless you tell me I'm doing the right thing. If I don't get the attaboy, I worry I messed up. Or if you get mad at me, like, that crushes my soul. If you think I'm wrong, like, I have such a hard time with that. So when I read this, and it just gets exponentially more difficult when it comes to, like, God, who you want to please more than any person, right? Consider it pure joy. It's so easy for me to slip into, well, I'll fake joy when everything is horrible. Because that's what I'm supposed to do. Right? Like, isn't that what we tell ourselves? Isn't it what we tell, like, everybody that comes to a church on a Sunday? Like, consider it. So just make yourself believe it. Just believe. And we'll throw in brother, sister to make us feel like we're in it with them, and we're not really in it with them. Because we don't feel anything that they're feeling. We just think this is the right thing to do. Your life's falling apart, consider that joy, because that's what the Bible says. Who are we helping? Because to be real with you, it doesn't help me when somebody says that to me. And then he goes on. By the way, it says it's many kinds, trials of many kinds. So it's not like one particular brand of trial that's like at an entry-level trial. Like, that's how we tend to think of this, is that James maybe just has entry-level trials in mind. Like, your car wouldn't start. I can maybe find joy in that. But he says many kinds, like all the stuff you go through. And, like, here's the deal. I hate running. With all my heart, I have a white-hot disdain for it. And you know what I'm convinced of? Every one of you do too. Now, you runners, you're going to come up to me after, or you're going to send me an email, and you're going to be like, well, the runner's high, and I just, feel really good, and it de-stresses me, and I want to be like, yeah, but when you're running, you hate it. Because we all hate it. That's why none of us do it. You ever thought about that? Like, the one time I go out running, it's because I saw a magazine waiting in line at the grocery store with some guy on it that had six-pack, what are they? Abs, and big muscles, and and he's smiling, and it's like life's all put together. And so I'm just going to go running, and it's going to be awesome, and it's not. I don't want to run, I want to look like that. And I don't want to have to go through this to look like that. So doesn't it seem crazy that someone would say, hey, there's good stuff, because we're going to read this in a minute. There's good stuff at the other end of this, so be joyful in the hard, in the midst of getting there. Like, come on. I don't think that's what James is saying, really. I mean, like in original language stuff, joy is not like happy, not like do a dance when your life falls apart. It's try and be content in God, which is equally as difficult, right? Anyway, he says, because here's why you can have joy in that, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And for me, like, I read perseverance and I go, well, that's like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that my troubles go away. It just means I get through them. You ever thought, like, God doesn't ever promise us, James doesn't ever promise us that we're going to get free of junk. You could be able to persevere through it. You'll be able to make it. And so then he says, let perseverance finish its work. Like, again, you have to choose that. And I know there's like science out there about your brain can be reshaped and you can think about things differently and you can learn to be positive, you can learn, and I believe all of that. But when was the last time when you were in the middle of the junk, you were like, okay, I just need to think about this differently? No, you're just feeling it. And for so long, I've just been burying, like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to really go through that. I want to just get to the end, so I almost pretend like I got to the end. And then you know what you realize? You get to the end, and it's worse than it ever was. So you got to let it, because then you'll be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And I just want to, like, respectfully ask God, this is the strategy? I just want to, like, this makes being a pastor or being a Christian really discouraging. You want to be whole, you want to be complete, you're going to have to go through it. And it's just like, it'd be so much easier if it was like miracle drugs and silver bullets all the time, right? Like, just say yes to Jesus and then it'll all be okay. Do you know why a lot of people walk away from Jesus? Is because it wasn't all okay. Because somebody skipped this paragraph. And I've sat with people, I've sat with couples that have lost their babies. And just this weekend, I'm on the phone with a guy who knows that he's going to die in the next hours. Like, what do you say to that? What do you do with that? And again, I know this sounds like, man, the most depressing church service I've ever been to. And honestly, I got no bow. Like, there's not that coming. I want you to understand that. This sermon is going to crash land. What do you say to people that are going through hard times like that? What do you say to two people that are married and go, our marriage is in trouble and we don't know what to do with ourselves? Just consider it joy. Put on a happy face, because it's going to grow your faith. And I believe that. I know that. But what I can't do anymore is pretend like that doesn't make this hard. Let's not do that anymore. Yes, we have faith. Yes, we have hope. And yes, James says, when you persevere and you endure, you will get a crown. The endurance crown, by the way, not like your big jewel, like Queen of England crown. I'm talking about like you made it to the end of the race crown. So yes, you have that, but the mile 20 of the run was horrible. And do you know what some of your non-church, non-Christian friends need to hear from your mouth? Mile 20 is horrible for me. And I won't pretend with you. And sometimes the people that are going through pain in our life need us to just sit down and go, this is horrible. And when they look at us and they go, but I thought you believed in a God that gives hope, and I thought you believe in a God that helps us and cares about us, and if that's true, how do you explain this? And you know what they need us to say? I don't know. I can't figure out how those two cross or make any sense. Like, that's okay. Faith isn't knowing the right thing to say in every minute. I'm learning this the hard way. I thought faith was I had the right Christian thing to say in the right moment. And it's just not. So I don't know. I don't know how you do this. Like, that's why I can't give you a recipe. That's what I typically try to do, right? By the end of the talk, by about this time in the talk, you'll start to feel, oh, he's starting to take a turn. He's got me all worried and panicked about how life is hard. And then we're going to get steps 1 through 5 on how to persevere and how to have joy in the midst of my pain. But I'm just going to shoot straight with you. I have no idea. And I'm sorry, I don't. But I've just sat in enough places, and I don't want you to think that I'm pretending up here. Like this, literally, I got sermons, but it just felt so gee willikers, friend, you're going through a hard time? Take joy. I think sometimes we need to just really wrestle with stuff and say, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Then a little bit later, James says something that I think is equally troubling. He says, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life, the one that we were talking about, the one the Lord has promised to those who love him. And get this, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. You shouldn't say that. I say that all the time because that makes me feel better. Right? Like when we're going through a hard time, whatever things we've built up to make ourselves, one of them is God's allowing me to go through this to teach me something. And that is true. But you know what he says the problem is? You and me. He says, don't say God's tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire. Thanks a lot, James. I don't know, that just feels really frustrating to me. Because we say things like, God's in this, and God's got you. And God will redeem this. But in it, it's just not that easy to go, oh yeah, I forgot that part, so now I'll be okay now. No, we're not. And this is how I know it's okay. Because there's another place towards the end of James's letter, we call it chapter 5. Please know that, man, this was like one letter he just wrote. But in chapter 5, he says, brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessing those who have persevered, not those who didn't have any trouble, those who had trouble and made it through the trouble. And then he says, you've heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. I don't know if you know the story of Job, but it is a quintessential catastrophe, his life. Job was a good, God-fearing guy that didn't do anything wrong. Was known by everybody in his town as like the guy who always had it together. He was the big brother, the pillar of virtue, the one that everybody just looked to him to have the answers and get the answers right every single time. Like he was faithful. And in one day, his whole family dies. All of his livelihood disappears. And he gets deathly sick. Here's your reward for being faithful, Job. Great incentive for the rest of us, right? And I know you're going, this is not okay what's happening right now because I'm very uncomfortable. But here's how Job responds. Because there's 42 chapters in Job, I think, and we always skip to the end. And we just talk about, but God redeemed it and brought it all back and made it better than ever, right? And so we just assume then that the way Job responded was, I'm going to consider this joy because God's growing my faith, and I'm going to be very pious and good and quiet as we go through this. If someone has gotten you to think that, they didn't read Job. Because here's what I read in Job. Job opened his mouth and cursed the day he was born. He says, why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? He goes even further. For sighing has become my daily food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace. I have no quietness. I have no rest. Only turmoil. You know what Job did when it all first happened? He shaved his head, tore his clothes, and sat in the burn pit for a while. And by a while, I mean days. And then his friends show up. He had awesome friends. One friend says, Job, what'd you do wrong? I feel like Job's response, my response might have been, just being honest. What did I do wrong? I did everything that God told me to do. And it got me nothing. And I bet his friends didn't have James's letter at the time, but I bet one of his friends would have said, hey, Job, you got to consider this joy, brother. And Job would have looked at him and gone, I lost every one of my children today. I have no way of making $1. And do you see my skin literally rotting off of my body? And so sometimes I just feel like what it's okay to do in our trial and in our hard time, at least this is what I'm doing right now, is to literally go, God, I got no idea. And I hope you do. Like this challenge in my life is more than I can handle. I literally have no idea what my next move is supposed to be or what my next word is supposed to be. And just to be honest like that. And not feel like you're sinning in that. Maybe it's more sinful to act like we got the answer when we don't really. I don't know. I just, again, I really don't have a turn to make here. I think my goal is maybe just to give you permission to be honest about struggling and having some doubts and some fears and questioning things. And stop playing a game. You know, like I said, I think I can count on one hand the number of times where I've been at the very least like okay saying I'm mad at God. And I remember feeling like, well, I'll tell you about the one time. It was when my grandpa died. I was 16 years old. This was a guy who, I know Mary Poppins says practically perfect in every way. I mean, that was my grandpa. And literally died with his hands in the air singing worship songs. And I remember walking around his neighborhood because he was dead. I remember going in and he's dead. And I said, God, that's what he gets? He's 68 years old. And he literally served you his whole life. And I remember saying, God, I'm mad at you for taking him. But what I did next was I went to James 1:1 and I started reading. And I got to James 1:2 and it says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. And my 16-year-old brain went, this is a trial. And I'm supposed to consider it joy. So I will tell myself to do the right thing here, and I will just do the right thing. And I never, actually dealt with it. Because I was just doing the right thing. I was just doing the Christian thing. And I remember, feeling like, why am I not feeling is sorrowful or all those things. And now what's weird is as a 38-year-old guy, I'm like, why am I still crying about my grandpa dying who's been gone 25 years? And I think that sometimes we want to get the proverbial cart before the horse. And I think we just need to do a better job of in the moment, we're honest with ourselves and we're honest with other people and we say, I have to believe this is about something, and I'll let you know what it is when I know. But right now, I got no idea. It's just horrible. Because I don't think, at least we don't have it recorded, where Job is like, yeah, guys, I know God's just going to grow my faith, and it's all going to be okay. And I'll look back on this one day. This is the other thing we look back on this one day, and we go, that was worth it. I just don't think he did that. And here's the other place I go that I think is underestimated when we talk about Easter. You know Jesus wanted to get out of it, right? Like in the garden, he says, Father, if you could take this cup from me, meaning if there's another way to accomplish what needs to be accomplished without me having to go through the brutality of the cross. And then Hebrews says, when you're going through a hard time and you're trying to endure, that's where you look. You look at him. Because he persevered through it. So, like I said, I'm just not gonna patronize you. And I'm not gonna say, and so here's the recipe. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not going to say that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to sing a song that might be new to you, but I think the song is so powerful because it's called Anchor of Peace. And here's what I'm thinking about anchors. They never make the storm go away. You ever notice that? You drop an anchor in the ground, in the water, it doesn't make the storm go away. It just holds the boat close. And the waves still come, and the storm still comes, and the lightning still comes, and the thunder still comes, but the boat just holds on. And so we're going to sing that song, and my hope is that it's the hope in this. It's from the honest discussion. That Jesus is our peace. And in the midst of storms, he's what we hold on to. And that's the only way we find joy. Let me pray. God, I don't know what you think about what's just happened. I mean, maybe you think this was a hot mess, and for that, I'm sorry. But Lord, I'm just trying to be real about the things that we face. And the truth is, given who David was and given who Job was, I really believe that you have given us space to be honest and open. And so, Lord, we're just coming to you with our trial today. Whatever it is, we're coming to you with it. And we just trust you to hold on to us, because sometimes it feels like we can't hold on. So will you hold on to us, and will you be our anchor? And give us the ability to consider our trials differently and understand the joy that comes in being connected to you through it all. Amen.